Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Extreme Desert Challenge. In the last video we defended the steakhouse against a few groups of tribespeople. We also made a large quantity of button-down shirts, which we then exchanged for a good amount of advanced components, and we also modified Alistair a bit with not one but 2 drill arms. Today our first event is the arrival of an Imperial trade caravan, so Steak will be the one to do the actual trading, as he is the only one with a high enough royal rank. The trade itself, however, is fairly unspectacular. We are just stocking up on even more components, and we are paying for that, as usual, with some high-quality homemade flake. Afterwards, we can then also catch our first glimpse of a fully functional Alistair in action. His anesthetic has completely worn off, and so we are now looking at a deep drilling speed of 413%, as well as a mining speed of 722%, so I have a feeling that underground steel deposit over here is not going to be around for that much longer. For the time being, however, Alistair has to take a quick break, and as a matter of fact so does everybody else, because Steak is giving another throne speech to hopefully inspire the colony, as a small mood bonus could come in handy for what we have planned today. You might remember that in the last video we received 2 quests, and today we will try to complete both of them, so I think it's a good idea to motivate our soldiers before they head out into battle. And indeed, Steak delivers an encouraging speech, resulting in a small +4 mood bonus, but that will last for 8 days, plenty of time for us to tackle both quests, I think. And with at least some of our colonists getting dressed for the occasion, we will start things off with this quest right here that is about to expire. We need to take out a pirate base that is guarded in total by 5 pirates and 6 turrets, and there may also be an unknown threat, but we'll only find that out once we get there. As a reward, we are once again picking the honor, of course, for Steak, because one of my goals for this playthrough is to actually have him reach the highest rank of Count, and for that we need quite a few more points. Now, somewhat surprisingly, the pirate camp is then actually pretty close by, so even in heavy armor we should be able to get there in just a few hours. Before we leave though, we'll quickly have Redhawk make 1 batch of chem fuel, not because we want to use drop pods to drop in there, but because we might want to use them to drop back out, and while steel and components should be readily available considering the amount of turrets on the map, chem fuel likely isn't, so we'll have to bring our own supply. Shortly after then, it is time to launch our caravan, and on this trip we'll be sending our 4 most competent fighters, Pollyanna, Jake, Steak and Edmo. And like I said, they will bring some chem fuel along with them, as well as a thrombohorn, some frag grenades and a shield belt, just for added versatility, and of course some food and medicine. At this point, the steakhouse actually also has the benefit of the Imperial caravan still hanging around, so if we are unfortunate enough to get attacked in the next few hours, they might offer additional protection. Now, as expected, it doesn't take long for our hit squad to arrive at their destination, and we are looking at a rather small map here with a pirate base that is really nothing special. We have 1 building with turrets all the way around, although those turrets are actually solar powered, and considering that the night is just beginning, that might perhaps work in our favor. In any case though, we want to stay outside of the turret's reach as we slowly make our way to the north of the base, although our approach unfortunately does not go unnoticed, and so we have to engage the enemy a little earlier than I had hoped. Still, this arguably even works in our favor as we have the chance to pick off a few isolated enemies, which also turns the bulk of the enemy forces into just 2 people, and considering that we hopelessly outmatched them in terms of numbers and equipment, this fight should really not last long. And there we are, our enemies are all dead, except for one who is for some reason part of a different group, but I think as soon as we attack the turrets he should come after us as well. And speaking of the turrets, for that we actually have a very convenient solution, and that would be Jake's charge lance. Conveniently enough, the charge lance outranges a turret by just one single tile, but even one tile is enough to have Jake start shooting while he remains completely safe. Edmo, Stake and Poleana meanwhile take care of the last defender, but he falls quickly and now there are only turrets left. Or at least there would be if that unknown threat hadn't just materialized, as it looks like 4 more pirates were hidden in the base. Luckily for us, however, they all carry melee weapons, so hopefully we manage to take them out before they can do any damage. Alright, no real surprises here, another easy victory for us. Jake did unfortunately suffer a small injury, but it's just a bruise, so there is no need to evacuate immediately. That means we can continue to take out turrets with him, and as we move in for number 2, we receive another quest. However, I think we'll have to decline this one. Yes, another potential colonist would be nice, but once again we don't know anything about her. And the consequence of attracting 2 raids to the steakhouse is not really ideal at the moment, because they could appear at any time, and at the moment our base is really not that well defended. And considering that we also want to complete another quest with even more colonists in the next 1 or 2 days, I think, unfortunately, we'll have to let this one pass us by. Now, with 2 turrets destroyed and 1 already claimed due to the lack of power, we can now move in Stake to take out the remaining 2. He does not quite have the range of Jake, but he also doesn't need to, as we can simply destroy the turret's power sources instead, which, considering their size and lack of protection, should also be a little easier to aim at. And so here we are. The base has been completely cleared, and all that is left to do at this point is to deconstruct anything of value. We do of course not have a ton of carrying capacity, but the least we can do is bring back some components. So once all the work has been completed, let's grab what we can and finally head back home. Back home meanwhile, a new day has begun. And so far it is remarkably uneventful until Troy receives a work frenzy. He will now work faster, and not just for a few hours, but for 8 straight days, which is probably a little bit offset by the fact that he's mostly doing research, but maybe we can also leave that to Carl for a while, so that Troy's productivity increase becomes a bit more noticeable. And speaking of productivity, at this point we have amassed over 1,400 units of steel, by the way. So Alistair's new toys are certainly paying off. Our victorious caravan then also quickly returns and drops off their loot, and the rest of the day remains fairly boring actually. We are not jumping into any new projects at this point. Instead, the main goal is to just get everyone's mood back up, because the next fight is just around the corner. On the next morning, however, we are first investing our recently acquired components, as we can finally construct a few more hospital beds. For the moment, only 2 more of them, bringing the total up to 3, but eventually we want to have 6 in here. Following that though, we are once again getting everybody dressed for combat, and we also have a special task for Troy, who will be one of only 2 people to remain home during this next mission, and who will now briefly switch his research focus onto the harpsichord. The reasons for that are quite simple. If we complete the quest, then Stake will receive his next royal rank, and his throne room will then need one of these, so I think it's best to already have it unlocked prior to that. Speaking of the quest, this time we need to send out 6 people, but a shuttle will pick us up, and once again our reward of choice are 8 points of honor. This time, however, they will only be awarded after the enemy camp has been cleared out, so let's hope that a 6-person squad of Carl, Poleana, Jake, Alistair, Stake and Edmo can get that done. In the meantime, Troy will stay at home for the aforementioned reasons, and as our faction heir, I think it's best if Redhawk remains at the steakhouse as well. Everyone else will now swiftly be sent over to the mission site. Unfortunately, we can't take any items with us, but hopefully the equipment that everyone has on them is going to be enough. Landing at the mission site, we then see a rather sizable map and a comparatively small enemy outpost. There are no turrets or anything like that here, but still 12 enemies. Let's see if we can find a way to engage them that doesn't put us in too much danger. And after surveying the map for a bit, I think I have found one such way, as we have a rather lengthy tunnel in the mountain over here that I think we can repurpose. So while Jake plays the bait, our entire squad will go in here, but we won't actually be engaging just yet. Instead, we can have Alistair very quickly mine out a defensible position. This setup here gives us a good amount of cover as well as a straight line of fire. Our enemies won't really have that many hiding places, and so this way we can nicely funnel them towards us. At this point, we can then also open fire with Jake, who accidentally already landed a shot earlier, but luckily that was not enough to send the entire enemy camp running at us. This hit here, however, is, so let's quickly get him back into cover, at which point we are then also informed that Troy has researched the harpsichord, so with that out of the way, let's continue with multi-barrel weapons. The enemy camp, meanwhile, is approaching, but our strategy seems to work just fine. Yes, we could have also mined out another one-tile strip over on the left side here to remove that bit of cover as well, but as you can see, it only provides protection for one enemy, while the rest are running straight at us and into their demise. After a while though, we have killed enough enemies to slowly get into a bit of a range problem, as the remaining hostiles are now so far away that barely half of our squad can hit them. So let us quickly abandon our position and once again lure the enemies forward, which I think should be enough to land the last few kills. And it looks like we only needed one more dead enemy anyway, so that means another fight is won, and once again Jake is the only one who took some damage. This time, however, his injuries are a bit more substantial, although luckily still far from being life-threatening. Now, this also means that we once again have royal honor to spend, and as promised, Steak is going to be the recipient. And this does indeed advance him to the title of Baron, although, as you can already see at a quick glance, our throne room still needs a bit of work before we can actually accept that title. In the meantime, while Pollyanna takes care of Jake's injuries, the rest of our squad takes a look at the enemy camp, and we do actually find a small armory here, although it doesn't contain anything too exciting. The most noteworthy item is probably an axe made out of silver. After also deconstructing the enemy's solar panel, we can then reload our shuttle, and this time we can actually take some stuff back home with us. So let's make use of that by grabbing pretty much anything of worth that we can find on this map, which includes lots of food, a few drugs, and also several sniper rifles. Shortly after then, the shuttle takes off, and a few seconds later everyone arrives back home. So far, I think we are doing quite well, but let's see what the rest of the episode has in store for us. The remainder of the evening, at least, is spent with getting back into some normal clothing and hauling our loot back into the base, and that's about it, so time to jump ahead to the next morning. And for the most part, that morning remains uneventful as well. We can see Troy here making more kibble to clear up some storage space, but apart from that, nothing too exciting happens until we begin the construction of one of our first defensive structures in the afternoon. What we are going to build here is really just a short funnel and a few shooting positions for our colonists. I think we'll talk a bit more about that when it's finished, and considering that it's made entirely out of granite, that could take a moment. As a matter of fact, construction is still underway late in the evening, at which point we receive yet another quest. This time, a hostile tribe invites us to peace talks, but we are going to decline that invitation, because as long as we have them as our enemies, that is a chance for an enemy attack not happening with mechanoids or pirates, but only with tribespeople who might be numerous, but in the grand scheme of things are probably the easiest to take care of. In the middle of the night then, we once again see Edmo participate in his favorite activity, and that is to make bionic body parts. This time he is fabricating a bionic leg, but trust me, for a change its recipient will be very happy about this. A few hours after sunrise then, we learn that Jake has made a full recovery, and Troy also finishes the research of multi-barrel weapons, so we can now make our very own miniguns, although with a price tag of 20 components for a single weapon, they definitely do not come cheap. Now at this point you can see that we are also making our throne/dining room a little smaller, and that also has to do with Stakes' impending ascendance to the next rank of royalty. We'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. For now though, we can see that Edmo has finished the leg, and so let us now take a closer look at the guy who gets it, which would be Carl. Now, not only will this remove the annoying scar on Carl's current right leg, but it will also satisfy him beyond that, because Carl has the transhumanist trait. As a result, he is actively craving to have artificial body parts installed on him, and not only that, at the moment he is actually receiving a permanent mood penalty for that not being the case. So in order to turn that frown upside down, Pollyanna will now install a shiny new leg on him, and as always, the procedure is completed without any issues whatsoever. And even though the anesthetic is still very much in effect, the mood bonus has already kicked in, so with one new leg we moved that -4 to a +4, not to mention that Pollyanna also just improved her medical skill to level 11. Now, at this point, our defenses have also progressed somewhat. At the moment, we are installing a few doors, and those 6 doors right in the middle, including the 2 that are right next to our deep drill, those are the spots where our colonists will be standing, waiting to shoot at the enemies coming down the tunnel. Once those enemies get too close, we can easily retreat and put a few doors between us and them, and at the moment I am actually planning to repeat this entire setup once more, because conveniently enough a second one of these boxes would fit right above the first one. That is, however, only the first step in making our base a bit more defensible. There are a few more things planned involving things like turrets and traps as well, but as you can see, even with several colonists helping out, the construction of all that does take some time. The construction also has to stop for a few days now, because we need to focus on our throne room, which is unfortunately not quite ready for the endgame just yet. Before we can get to that, however, we are interrupted by a trade caravan, and this one includes a family member of 2 of our inhabitants, which also serves as a nice reminder that yes, Troy and Pollyanna are in fact related, and their aunt and great-grandmother respectively has just paid them a visit. While they are on their way over here, our throne room is once again getting smaller, but don't worry, this will actually work in our favor. Since Troy can't really help out much at the moment with all of the construction going on, we might as well also continue researching, and let's complete that weapon portfolio. The ability to craft both assault and sniper rifles should definitely come in handy. Now, at this point, it is then time to spend some gold, as we are upgrading Stake from a regular to a grand throne. In theory, we could also make that even fancier by using silver, jade or even more gold instead of steel, but I think the steakhouse is not quite at that point just yet, so the regular steel version will have to do. While that is being constructed, we can send out Red Hawk to meet the trade caravan, and as always we'll sell off all of our drugs as well as a few packaged survival meals. I also wanted to sell off the silver axe that we obtained from the mission earlier, but since this is a combat supplier, the selling prices for weapons will actually be pretty bad, so we will hold on to it and instead purchase a triple rocket launcher, just like the Doomsday rocket launcher, one of those weapons that we'll hopefully never need, but if we do, then we'll be very glad that we have it. A few hours later then, Pollyanna finishes the throne, and not only that, it is actually of excellent quality. As you can see though, the thing is quite large, and thus begins a lengthy process of rearranging stuff. Now, I'll take you through this in rather quick fashion here, but in the end, this is what we ultimately want to end up with, The throne still right next to the table still surrounded by chairs, and all of that in such a way that the poker table, the TV, the billiards table, and eventually the harpsichord all still fit in. Not quite so easy, but also not entirely impossible. What's actually going to be a bit more tricky is what we'll have to do with the floor. You see, up until now, it did not really matter what kind of floor we put where. With Steak's advancement to Baron, however, that is going to change, as he now requires fine flooring in the entirety of his throne room. That means either fine carpet at a cost of 35 units of cloth per tile, or fine stone tiles at a cost of 20 units of stone per tile. And that is the reason why we decreased the size of this room, because even now it is still a 10 by 10 area, and flooring the entire thing is going to be expensive. Ideally, we also want to end up producing something that looks kind of nice, which of course does not make the entire task any easier. Still, as you can see, we are making good progress. Edmo has also started working on the harpsichord, for which we once again need the smithy. The only thing that is certainly going to be an issue is acquiring enough cloth, because I would really like to keep that red carpet under the table. For that area alone, however, we would still need over 1000 units of cloth. Eventually then, Edmo produces an excellent quality harpsichord, which we can install shortly after, and slowly but steadily the place is starting to look a bit more royal. As soon as the instrument is installed, Carl also plays us a little song. I suppose if you are unable or rather unwilling to do any actual work yourself, then the least you can do is keep your companion's spirits high. Unfortunately then, a bit more rearranging was necessary because unlike the normal throne, the grand throne cannot actually be placed right next to the table. At the same time though, we also still need to maintain a one tile gap to the billiards table, so it is starting to get a little tight in here, but once the place is eventually finished, I think it will do just fine. Finishing that throne room, however, that is something that will have to happen in the next episode. As another night sets across the desert, I think we have reached a good point to make the cut for today. So join me next time for what will hopefully be Steak's coronation as a Baron of the Empire. To wrap things up for today, we also once again have some fan art, albeit of the different kind, as Kitty Litter over on our Discord, which you can join by the way if you are a patron, has produced this lovely image of Alistair, who over the course of this episode has actually sneakily produced about 2000 units of steel, I believe, and who also played a not entirely insignificant role in that second quest earlier. So thank you for the lovely contribution. I hope you're happy that your drawing found its way into the video. Speaking of which, if you want to make me happy and enjoy today's episode, then please go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. And if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe if you haven't done so already, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.